everyone, and welcome to Liberty Village. I have the great pleasure today of introducing a good friend of mine, your mayor, John Tory. Now, I've known John since we were in high school. He's always been an honest, decent man, a person with real integrity. He cares deeply about you, about Toronto, the people who live here. He has spent his entire career giving back to the city that he loves so dearly. He's been a volunteer head of organizations like United Way, Civic Action. He's also worked for Premier Bill Davis, served as commissioner of the CFL, also spent time on the radio and on television. And John Tory, of course, as you know, and I know, is a huge champion for our city, Toronto. For the last 4 years as mayor, he has led the way in getting things done for Toronto by working with other levels of government, which, as we know, can be slightly challenging, but he's very good at it. Finally, he's able to get on with building transit, something that we so badly need. Now, a whole lot of mayors and political candidates have talked about it, but he's the one who is getting it done. He's determined to keep life affordable for families in this city, to keep us safe and strong and vibrant, all of the things that has Toronto on top of the world right now. Proud of being a Torontonian, we are. We need leadership, though, that works for this city, and that's been working for Toronto, and that will continue to work for Toronto. So join me, put your hands together, and welcome our mayor, John Tory.
Good morning. Well, thank you very much, and I want to say thank you to everybody for coming today, and thank you for your support for our city. You know, not just for me, but for our city, because that's important. Together, we've come a long way, and I want you to think back to 4 years ago. You know, back when council was bickering and dysfunctional, when there was no agreed-upon plan for transit. There was no plan whatsoever. Things weren't getting built or fixed. I was elected because you wanted me to get on with the job of building transit and keeping taxes low, and to work with everyone. You wanted a leader who would work hard to make your lives better. And though there remains much to be done, I would be the first to say that. That's why I'm running for re-election. We've made those things start to happen. People from around the world look up to us as a city that gets it right, where people live together and work together from all kinds of diverse backgrounds and beliefs. And we make that work better than anyone, anywhere. We're a rapidly growing city. Just look at the number of cranes in the sky and the big projects underway, more than any other city in North America. We've got 70,000 new people coming here each year to live and to work and to pursue their dreams. Toronto is booming, my friends. There can be no doubt about that. And with this kind of rapid growth, there are tremendous opportunities and there are challenges too. Take the gun violence we've seen lately on our streets. We need to do more because no one should ever have to feel unsafe anywhere in our city. We're tackling this. Let me tell you, I am absolutely determined. We will have hired by the end of this year many more police officers. In fact, a total of 200 by the end of the year, with 200 more to come in 2019. We've made an urgent plea to the federal government to ban the sale and possession of handguns in the city of Toronto and to enact tougher sentencing and bail requirements. Tougher sentencing and bail requirements for gun offenders. Because let me ask you a very simple question, and you've heard me asking it over and over again around the city. Why does anyone need to have a handgun in our city? I led City Council to approve a plan that will invest at least $30 million to put more police on our streets, to put more crime-fighting technology in place, and to fund more community programs for young people. And we've asked for the help of the federal government in doing those things as well. The province has committed $25 million over 4 years to help Toronto combat violence in the city. And if I'm reelected as mayor, I will make sure that the city matches this $25 million over the next 4 years, because when it comes to getting guns off our streets, there is more to do, and more we will do. I can commit that to you absolutely. And we have to do more, to be sure, to make sure that our city is affordable for everyone, because no one should have to feel anxious, for example, about not having the means to put a roof over their head. We're going to have to stand up for Toronto when the occasion demands. That's what I did when we secured a greater share of the gas tax for Toronto. We knew that we needed more revenue for transit, and we were prepared to go it alone on road tolls. We were prepared to do that. But when that didn't happen, by standing up for Toronto, we got the province to come to the table with funding from gas tax revenues. And so I'm proud of what we've done. I'm proud of my record of standing up for Toronto and working to make Toronto a better place to live. There's more to do, and more that we will do. But for a moment, let's look at how far that we've come. Because things, they just feel better than they were, and they are better. Take transit, for example. 4 years ago, there was no plan. Council had argued and debated and studied and redebated and redecided, and the bottom line was that transit planning had come to a standstill. The first thing we did under my administration was to introduce a plan and get the council to agree on it and approve it. And that took a lot of hard work and experience and leadership, but we got there in the end. The plan was approved. Even my opponent described her enthusiasm for that plan and took some credit for it. And I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that. But it doesn't quite square with all of her criticism that we hear today about that plan now that she suddenly decided she wants to be the mayor. But we had to continue to move forward. So then we secured funding. $9 billion from the federal and provincial governments, not a dollar of which we had before I became the mayor. Not a dollar. That's also not an easy thing to do. And it's worth pointing out that 4 years ago, we had a Conservative government in Ottawa and a Liberal government in Queen's Park, and now it's the other way around. But we're still getting the work done, working together. So the next thing, it's a very positive story. So the next thing we did was we actually started doing the work, getting the shovels in the ground. Double tracking the Stouffville GO line in Scarborough, where you can go and see the work being done, maybe not today on Sunday, but where you can go and see the work done today. Double tracking the GO train tracks in Stouffville, that's to enable Smart Track. The new station at East Harbour, where 50,000 new jobs are being created, or right here at Liberty Village, where thousands of people struggle each day just to get to work, that's also Smart Track. And my opponent loves to pretend that those things aren't happening because she wants to start up the old debates and the old arguments and the studies all over again. She wants to take us backwards to the days where all we did was redraw plans and redebate plans and redecide things, and no work actually got done. Just more debates, more studies, more plans, and no building. Well, I say to that, no way. We are not going back to those bleak days. We are moving forward with a realistic, long-term plan approved overwhelmingly by the City Council and supported by the other governments. And it's an approved plan which will ease congestion in our city because we need that desperately. We can't spend 4 more years debating and delaying and running the very risk that this entire transit plan comes apart just like we've seen so many times in the past. That's why we've got the transit deficit we have. Because every time we thought we had a plan, somebody decided they were going to start pulling parts out of it and start amending it and start changing it instead of moving forward and actually doing it. And that's what we're doing now, is we're moving forward with that plan. And we're moving forward with other city building projects at the same time, like flood protection for the Portlands. This is a very important project we're doing again in partnership with the other governments that is unlocking a key piece of waterfront land where we will create, not too long from now, affordable homes and tens of thousands of new jobs. We have also made progress on making the city more affordable. We've held the line on taxes while bringing in surpluses, significant surpluses, the same years in which we've been able to make record investments. So let me go back over that again. We held the line on taxes to at or below the rate of inflation, and in each of those years managed so that we had significant surpluses at the end of the year, and at the same time made record investments. Record investments in what? Record investments in transit. Record investments in transit, in housing, in student nutrition, in childcare. The list goes on. And for the first time, our city is meeting and exceeding its own targets set before I became mayor for affordable housing. Now, there is no question. Yes, that's very positive. There's no question we need to do more, that we always needed to do more. We had to start by achieving those targets set many years ago and not met before I was the mayor. So I started in terms of doing more by urging Ottawa to make housing a federal priority again. The mayors of Canada's big cities, with Toronto's mayor finally once again playing a much-needed leadership role, persuaded the federal government, and they came forward and stepped up to create a $40 billion national housing strategy. And I commend them for that, because you know why? That is going to help us to invest more and to build more and to do more to make sure that there is more affordable housing available to people living in the city of Toronto. Now, in terms of what we're going to do, working in partnership with the federal government under that national strategy, I have set a goal for the City of Toronto. It is a realistic, achievable goal. It's a goal of creating a minimum of 40,000 affordable homes over the next 12 years. I believe in setting goals that you can actually achieve. I think it is crucial to the public having confidence that you set goals you can actually achieve. Now, I got that number, the 40,000 new affordable rental housing units, not out of a hat. I got it from our city officials and confirmed it with people in the industry. I believe in working together with other governments because we can do more together. And I believe in partnering with the private and nonprofit sectors in unlocking their ingenuity and their know-how. We will get it done. We've got it done over the last 4 years, and we are just getting started. We're just getting started. Now, some people, including my opponent, they will tell you that big plans require big tax increases. But that's just not so, and we have proven it. While keeping property tax increases to inflation over the past 4 years, we have made those record investments I made reference to in the TTC. We have restored routes that had been cut in previous years, bus routes that had been cut. We've opened and funded 6 new subway stops. We've added new express bus service across the city. And we didn't stop there. We've made transit free for kids 12 and under. We brought in discounted fares for the first time ever for low-income people and for disabled people. First time ever. And we've introduced, and it's in place now for Presto card holders, a hop-on, hop-off transfer. Transit was a major focus, as it had to be, and so too was housing. We have made the single biggest investment ever in the repair of our aging public housing buildings, so more people have a decent place to live. And you know, again, and there we still have a lot of work to do on that, but we finally brought the other governments, the federal government and the provincial government, to the table, and they came to the table to pay their share of those repair bills. And we've done it while we've made massive new investments in childcare, in community programming, student nutrition, all without tax increases above the rate of inflation, and every single one of those years there was a surplus when we came to the end of the year. It is amazing what we can achieve when we work together. When we work together with the council, when we work together with the private and nonprofit sector, and when we work together with the other governments. And we're just getting started. If I'm re-elected as your mayor, we will improve city services. We've already put a lot of services online, just to give you one example, like paying for Green P parking with an app. That wasn't happening before I became the mayor. You can now more easily sign your kid up for soccer with a click. But we need much more of that, much more of that. No one wants to stand in line when you can access services on your own time, on your own device. So we're going to introduce a one-window online service to streamline things like home renovation applications, childcare, affordable housing. And we're going to unlock the power of Toronto's tech sector. We've got the greatest tech sector here, full of smart people, so that no one will have to wait in line to access a program or a service at the City of Toronto. We can do it. And we will also support our homegrown tech companies by making local job creation a key factor when the city buys new technologies. We simply have to do more to be sure that every part of our city benefits from our growing tech, film, and banking sectors. They're experiencing huge growth. Did you know there were more high-tech jobs created in Toronto in 2017 than in Silicon Valley and New York put together? That's reported by Bloomberg News, not by me. Our film industry is thriving. So what we need to do now is to make sure that our young people benefit in every single part of Toronto. And so that is why we will, in the coming term, connect the Toronto tech sector to the Partnership to Advance Youth Employment program. It's a very well-known and very successful city program called PAY. And we're going to make sure by connecting that program to this thriving tech sector that we make sure that our growing industries are connected into the talent young people who live in every part of our city. And if I can flip that around to make sure that young people in every part of our city, without exception, are connected to our growing tech sector. And the goal there is going to be one we're going to work hard to do, and that is to reduce youth unemployment by half. We simply have to do that. We will take jobs out to the isolated parts of our city, and there are parts of the city that aren't as well connected up to the rest of the city and to opportunity. And we've got to connect the young people living in those neighborhoods to opportunity, including young people who may have taken a wrong turn in their lives and who want to get their lives back on track. And at the city, we're going to lead by example on pay equity, on diversity, on inclusion. You know, one thing we're known for around the world is the incredible quality of life that we have here. We're a vibrant city. People notice it when they come here. But I want us, and we need to become even more vibrant. And to do that, we're going to build more and better public spaces. That's why I have championed innovative public space through the creation of the Bentway, for example, a park underneath the Gardiner Expressway. There's something that's an incredible thing, and if you've been to see it and been to see the people using it, the 70,000 people who live right around there and other people who come from across the city to visit a park built underneath the Gardiner Expressway. We have the Meadowway in Scarborough, a wonderful new park that's being built along a hydro corridor, land that really wasn't used and land that we need to use in an innovative way. And then there's the Rail Deck Park along the Front Street Rail Corridor. And those, I can tell you, are just the beginning because we need more of this kind of innovative public space across the city. We've made Toronto a music city. We've introduced arts in the parks. We've protected live music venues. We've doubled our tree planting budget as we said we would, exactly as we said we would. But we're going to be going even further. In 2020, we will start a year of public art, and in partnership with our artists, and there are many, many of them, and they're really terrific, but in partnership with those artists and the private sector, we are going to introduce new public art projects in neighborhoods across the city. And I also support an expanded street art program, and we're going to bring that forward so that we can bring more innovative street art to Toronto alleyways and other public spaces like that. I want our city to grow in an ambitious and a thoughtful and an inspiring way. And so that means I also want new design standards for high-rise development so that our skyline remains beautiful and draws admiration and investment from around the world. We're going to make our city more livable in the winter. You know, that's a tall order sometimes, but we can make our city more livable in the winter, among other things, by expanding recreational services for winter activities. We're going to make Toronto a greener city by continuing to invest so that we hit our climate goals. And we have ambitious climate goals. They've been approved under my administration by the City Council. And what is the most important thing we can do there to achieve those climate goals? Continue building public transit. Move forward. Don't slow down. Don't go backwards. Don't start changing the plans so that when we build that public transit, we are less reliant on cars. That is the single key, not just to reducing congestion, not just to getting people around the city better, but also to making sure that we meet our climate change goals, our goals of reducing greenhouse gas reductions. And added to that, we can make sure that the many hundreds of city buildings, big and small, all kinds, are not wasting heat and hydro, because that too not only contributes to greenhouse gas emissions, but of course it contributes to money out of your pocket that is not well spent. And I want to go even further. I want to build on our successes that we've had in the city. There are things we don't often think about. Think about the path system downtown. It's the system underground, and it's like no other city in the world has one like that. And it's an incredible thing at all times of the year, especially in the winter. But you know what? And I know that you know this, it's confusing a lot of the time to visitors and tourists. And if we're being honest about this, I think it's confusing to a lot of people who live here, people who have gone around there for years. So what are we going to do? We're going to digitize the mapping system in the path to make it easier to get around. I mean, if you can use your phone to get around the city, you know, with those apps that we have many of them, and to help you guide you around the city, why can't we do the same thing to get around underground in our city when there's all those shops and all that joy to experience on a winter day when you want to just go somewhere to have lunch and you get lost and are late for work coming back. We gotta bring that to an end, and we can do that. We've got the smart people here, we've got the technology, and we've got the path, and so we're going to continue to do that. We're going to continue to expand the path, because that is building on a number of Toronto success stories. It's building on the success of the path, which is a sensible thing for us to have in this city, and it's building on the technological expertise we have right here in Toronto to get them to help us to digitize that. So 4 years ago, 4 years ago, Toronto wanted leadership that worked. And that's why you elected me. You wanted our city to work for you. You wanted someone who would get things done after years of big talk and no action. You wanted someone who would work with the other governments and with the council. Because you know what? Being the mayor is just not about just making speeches. It's just not about that. It's about, you have to be able to make a speech, but it's not just about making speeches. It's about making progress. It's about standing up for the people of Toronto when you have to do that, but it's also about working together to get things done. And that is what I have done, and that is what I will continue to do. Because an emerging global city needs leadership that works for you and for families and for everyone. And that's what I intend to continue to do. Thank you very much.
Mayor Tory, it is time now to talk to the audience, and they have questions for you one-on-one, and we're going to begin with Adam. And Adam from Davenport has a question about what most people are talking about in this election campaign, and it's transit. Adam?
Hi, Mayor Tory. My name is Adam. I live in the Davenport area, and I love the neighborhood I live in. I take transit all around Toronto to get where I need to go. Especially I went to the University of Toronto, and I was on the varsity basketball team. I'll take it to games, practices, hanging out with friends, even going to work. But as we know, in the city of Toronto, it's difficult taking the transit. We face some challenges, which include subway transit being very, very, very crowded, and also buses having delays. And there's not enough transit for the people of the city of Toronto. So my question for you is, what are you going to do to get the people moving in the city of Toronto? And when are we going to see transit being built?
Well, Adam, thank you for the question, and congratulations on varsity basketball. That is something that I did not achieve when I was at the University of Toronto. Not even close. In fact, I didn't even go to the tryouts. But thank you very much for the question. And I'll just say, first of all, I can very much relate because I hear from people every day. I've been going around the city, probably certainly there's no mayor that's gone around the city more than I have to listen to people in all parts of the city, all over the city. And I hear the frustrations they have about getting around. And it includes services that had been cut. It includes sometimes the complications of getting around. And so the first thing we have done over the course of the 4 years, starting day one, is to improve service, to restore services that have been cut, to add all kinds of new express bus services, to enhance bus service. And this is part of what has been paid for by the record investment that I made reference to earlier on. And we've taken the steps that we've taken that I mentioned again about affordability of transit through the Kids Ride Free 12 and under, through the low-income fare pass, and through the hop-on, hop-off transfer, which isn't really about affordability only. It's about helping business and helping transit ridership. But, you know, I'll be honest with you, the thing that is going to make the biggest difference to you over time, and you know, some of it sooner and some of it taking a little bit longer, is to get on with building transit. Because the reason our transit service isn't what it needs to be today is because we haven't got on with building it. And this is where the contrast is going to become very clear between me and my opponent, Ms. Keesmaat. I mentioned earlier on, and I'll mention it again, we developed a plan. It was developed by our city officials largely. We then went and got that plan approved overwhelmingly at the City Council. We then went and worked hard with the other governments and had their cooperation. And I see my friend and Member of Parliament Marco Mendicino's here, and he helped with that. We went to the federal government and the provincial government and got $9 billion in funding. And then we actually began on every single one of the projects. The relief line has been talked about for decades in this city, decades. Do you want to know the first administration of any that has actually invested, together with the other governments, significant amounts of money? Like, I think right now it's $150 million being invested as we speak on actual planning and design. They're doing soil core samples along Pape Avenue and so on in the city to build that subway. And for all the years of talk that had gone on, for all the people who said it was the most important project in the city, including my opponent, none of them had moved forward with any action on that project. And that's what we're doing today. And now you have a candidate, my opponent, who is saying that we're going to start to take that plan, the approved plan, the plan the other governments have bought into and put their money up for, and start to take it apart. Let's take a little piece out there, and let's shuffle a little money around over there, and let's do this one first instead of that one. And I tell you something, that is a prescription for getting back to exactly where we were when we started 4 years ago, which is paralysis in terms of building transit, more debates, more discussions, people saying, well, I'm not in for that plan, my money wasn't put up for that plan, and that is not what we need in this city. We need to get on with it, and that is going to be the best answer to you and to your families and to everybody in this room, and it's going to be the best answer to traffic congestion, and the best answer to saving the environment is to get on with the plan that we've approved, build transit, and that's what I'm going to do.
And Adam, I know for a fact that the mayor not only talks the talk, he walks the walk, he takes transit. So there you go. Thank you very much for that. And let's now move to Oksana. Hi, Oksana. Oksana has a question. She's from Etobicoke, and the question is about affordability in our city. And who have you got with you, Oksana?
Yes, that's my little son, Andre, and my daughter, Dorena's right there, and my husband, Bohna, and we came here as a family. Hi, Mayor Tory. I just had a question regarding, raising a family and being a homeowner is becoming more and more expensive. And, whether it's commuting, putting kids into recreational programs, grocery shopping, just feel like it's becoming more and more expensive in Toronto. So I was just wondering what you as a mayor can do to make life more affordable for families like ours. Thank you.
Well, Oksana, thank you. And I want you to know that I've been focused on this, not just because it's election time, but over the last 4 years. One of the first things that I did, and I did it principally as a measure of affordability, was to make transit free for kids 12 and under. And if you think back, I mean, we had two objectives we set at the time. One was to make sure we grew up a generation of transit users so that people were used to, from the earliest age, using public transit to get around, because we've got to do that. But the other reason we said very clearly at the time was that if you have 2 or 3 kids and you don't have a car, which many families don't because they can't afford to have a car or they choose not to have one, then obviously if we can make it free for the kids to use transit, that's going to save hundreds of dollars for those families, many of whom are people that are struggling to pay all those bills that you made reference to. So we've done things like that. We've added recreational spaces. We've increased the number of childcare subsidies quite significantly, while at the same time keeping tax increases low. But that's where taxes do come in. Because I think it's probably true to say, for most of the people in this room, that the single biggest check that you end up writing to the city, and this applies to tenants too, of course, because tenants end up through their rent paying property taxes, the single biggest check you'd write to the city every year would be for your property taxes. And so I think the best thing I can do in terms of something that I have a direct control over with my council colleagues to keep the city affordable is to keep taxes affordable. And that is why I have made a commitment for the next 4 years, and I think I have a track record, in fact, I know I do, of saying it can be done. You can keep tax increases to the rate of inflation or below, and run a surplus in your budget, and make record new investments in transit and housing and all kinds of other things. And I've said that I will do that in the next 4 years. And it's going to be another one of those issues where there's going to be quite a contrast that people are going to have to consider very carefully between myself and my opponent. Now, on the fundamental question for that big check people write for their property taxes every year, she has not said anything as yet. Nothing. And I think it's a pretty fundamental question because it relates not only, of course, to whether you're prepared to really do things to keep the city affordable, but also it really it relates to your ability to set out a full kind of plan for the city and manage its affairs, which I think is very important to people who live here. But I will say to you, in fact, I'm doubtful about, even if when we hear something about that, which has been a long time coming, still hasn't, there's things that she's posted in the past on the internet when she was the chief planner of the city of Toronto. So when she had a position of great authority, she put up on the internet, I didn't put it there, she put up a post in which she said, there's a real problem here. There's a real problem here. New York has 18 local taxes and Toronto only has 3. Now, I saw that and I thought to myself, that's a problem? I thought to myself, you know, if there's some sort of a competition as to who can have the most local taxes, I wasn't aware it was on, and I don't really want to be in it. So, we're going to have some discussions about that. We're going to have some discussions about that because we're not in a race as to who can have the most local taxes. We're in a race to keep the city affordable. You know, we're trying to take the money we get from people with a very modest inflation increase and do more with that. And work with the other governments, make sure they contribute to Toronto's well-being when it comes to transit and housing, and do more with that. And that's what I'm committed to doing over the next number of years. And I think that's going to be proven to be quite a contrast with what my opponent's approach is. And I think her approach is going to be something people can't afford in many respects. I don't think they can afford it out of their pockets. And I don't think that the city can afford it in terms of the health and well-being of the city as a place we want people to live and to invest going forward.
Very good. All right. Oksana and your beautiful family, thank you for that question. And you, Mayor Tory, just mentioned working with other levels of government. That makes a perfect segue to Paolo, who has a question about you working with other levels of government to get things done for our city.
John Tory, good morning. Thank you to invite us here. First of all, I want to say we are a local business located in Yonge and Eglinton. And the story is a little bit funny, I want to say, because 3 years ago I had a chance to meet you. It was a charity event. And I was in between to invest or not invest in Canada, in Toronto. But you gave me the right words. Maybe you don't even remember, because you see, I can see you're a humble person. You greet all the people. Thank you for that. And you were telling me, don't worry, Canada, Toronto is going to give you the good chance to do something in Canada, in Toronto. Thank you for that. And I'm still believing in my project, and because of you. This is my beautiful wife. She wants to ask you more the technical question about, she said.
Okay. Hi, Mr. Tory. I'm Nadine. My question is about small businesses. So with the recent decision for the province to cut council by half, you know, there's going to be a lot more levels of government having more control over the city than I had thought. Things like keeping businesses tax low for small businesses like us, or increasing the transit to allow my clients to get to me or to get to other small businesses. My question is, how are you planning to work with the other levels of government, federal, provincial, in order to make this happen?
That I'd love to know what the business is that you have put together with the encouragement of the mayor.
Yeah, so what we've done is we've started up a boutique. So our boutique is an Italian boutique. We import everything from Italy, mostly men's clothing and a lot of women's accessories. So it's pretty hectic back and forth, a lot of importing and such, but we love it and we do it with passion. Thank you for that.
Well, thank you for the question. But you know what? Thank you more than anything else for having the confidence and the courage to invest. I was so heartened. And you know, you're heartened by when you're able to help people in this job, and that happens every day in small ways. And people ask you, you know, small things that are big for them, but that are relatively small for the government to do. But I think you're also really heartened by when you find out, as I did totally by chance walking into this store and not even remembering, because you don't remember every single encounter you ever have. And he said to me, Paolo did, you told me 3 years ago, this is a place of great opportunity. You should start up your business that you have a desire and a passion to start up. You will do well because you're so enthused about it. And lo and behold, again, completely by chance, I walked into the store when I was out canvassing on stores along Yonge Street, and there he was saying, well, you were one of the people who inspired me. And I was so inspired by the fact that you had had the courage to go out and do that. Now, thank you. Now, let me talk about working with the other governments. This is actually one of the hardest parts of this job. It's actually one of the hardest parts of the job, but you know what? It's not so much about this job or about me or about any mayor, because it's the same problem or the same challenge everybody faces in their life every day. You know, the people who are here in their own business relationships, whether it's just at work working for someone else, if you're in politics, if you're, frankly, I mean, if you think about our homes, our families, there are challenges. There are lots of good times, but there are difficult times. There are bumps that come in the road. And so you can decide on one of two approaches that you can take when it comes to how you deal with those things. In my own case, I feel, and I have felt throughout the 4 years, and I will feel going forward, because it's just who I am and what I believe, that what you have to do when you have the bumps in the road and the difficult days working with the other governments is you have to speak up, and you have to make it clear, and you have to do everything you can to make sure that you try and get a better result than you seem to be getting. But at the same time, you always have to remember that it is more important to be building bridges and maintaining bridges with those governments because they are our partners. You know, if you have a dispute at home, I mean, you can take the approach my opponent took at the very beginning. And again, she's tried to do all kinds of furious backpedaling since the beginning, but let's go back and look what was said. I had a disagreement. We all had a disagreement. Many people did anyway, with the process that was used to change the size of the city council. It was done without consultation, and it was quite unilateral and not right. And so my opponent said, at first blush, seeing this, well, I think we should perhaps take a look at seceding from the province of Ontario. Now, aside from that being, I think, a ridiculous idea that would plunge us back into probably 10 years, you want to talk about redebating transit. Redebating the Constitution is a whole other kettle of fish that I think would be just as bad, and people don't want that either. And so, you know, there was a bit of, blowback from that suggestion. And the next morning, she said, I've slept on it. I'm thinking, oh, what's coming next? And she said, I've slept on it. I still think it's a good idea. I don't. So what you have to do instead, and that's going to be my approach, it has been, so people see I've had a proven track record. And by the way, that track record, in partnership with the other governments, has produced the $9 billion that we have towards funding the transit plan. It has produced a really good national housing strategy from the Government of Canada. And it has produced support on community safety from both of the other governments working in partnership with us. And so I will continue to adopt that approach. You will not see me. You'll see me stand up for Toronto. No question about that. You've seen me do it when the road tolls were turned down and when we had to go and fight to get that gas tax money, when the provincial government moved unilaterally to change the composition of the city council. But you won't see me saying that I'm going to sort of pack up, my bat and balls and go home. That we're going to continue to work with those governments. We're going to stand up for Toronto when we need to do that. We are going to make sure that Toronto's interests are well represented, but we are going to work in partnership with them because I think that is what people want to see. They want to see us working together to get things done for them, building transit, building more affordable housing, improving services for people, and not seeing us engaged in a kind of posturing and things that really just don't make any sense when it comes to saying, well, I'm just fed up with that and I'm just going to, not be involved anymore. We've got to be involved. We've got to be partners. We're all in one country, the greatest city in the greatest country in the world, and we've got to work together.
And Mayor Tory, you talk about standing up for Toronto. You also clearly stand with Toronto, and that leads us to Tevlin. He is a young man who has a big question about violence in our city. Tevlin.
Hi, Mayor. My name is Tevin Wallington. I'm a part of the Meta Distinction Trust 15 program. I live up in North Edinburgh, and I'd like to talk to you about gun violence in our city. I know you talked about it, and I would like to really know what you plan to do, because I really genuinely believe that programs and actually teaching the young people of our city, of our many communities, that there are other ways to do things and the right way to do things. So generally, what is your plan for helping our communities when it comes to gun violence?
Thank you very much for the question. And I just want to say to people that Trust 15 is one that I'm particularly familiar with, but I'm familiar with many, many of these programs that are investing in our young people and our families across the city. And I've been to see them. I've been out in the neighborhoods for long before I was mayor. Long before I was mayor, I was supporting those programs, going to see them, trying to figure out how they could help through my work with the United Way and through my work with many, many other charitable organizations that I was proud to volunteer with before I became the mayor. And these programs are making a huge difference. If you saw these young people, that the inspiration they take from the programs, it's inspiring. It's inspiring. If you see the difference it makes, and they will tell you, and you can see the self-confidence that these young people radiate, like you, even to stand up and ask a question like that, it's not that easy a thing to do in a room full of people like this. And so those programs are working. And I'll talk about the other side for a moment too, though, because it's also true. That I have been, I'm not afraid, and in fact, I know it is my responsibility, and I go because I go to provide comfort and reassurance right to the neighborhoods where the shootings take place when they take place. And I've gone to the funeral homes to meet the families of those who are the victims of the shooting. And so if you don't think when any of these kinds of incidents happen in the city, when I wake up really early in the morning and I hear the first newscast, nothing makes my heart sink more than to hear that there has been, one of these incidents that's happened in our city, because I know that we're a family here, we're a community here, right across the city, every single one of us. In fact, the big challenge that's in front of us is making sure every single Torontonian is included in the opportunity that is this city and that is this country. So I will tell you, I am working with more determination than you can possibly imagine to try and address it, and it's not a simple issue. Those who will come and tell you there's some simple solution, and I have tried very hard not to do this. I've suggested a whole bunch of ideas, but never have I said any one of them is an answer all by itself to the violence that we're seeing in Toronto. And so I'll just tell you the three areas we've been working on. One, we are going to support our police. We're going to support them in the ways they need that support. And that comes from, yes, hiring 200 people. That will be done for 2018 by the end of the year. And yes, doing that again next year to make sure that we have the people to do that work. And it means also supporting them when they need new technology. Just the other day, we made an important announcement. Marco Mendocino was there to fund a wonderful program. Again, it's not exactly the same as Trust 15. It's called Focus Toronto. And it provides case by case, young person by young person by person, help with all the resources we have, police people and United Way people and other agencies, to make sure we help people get their lives back on track and stay away from violence and stay away from some of the things that can be unhealthy. And so we're going to support the police. The second thing we're going to do, we are going to fight. And I have been fighting, and I will continue to fight for changes that I believe are necessary to the laws. I learn not from reading a book or reading the newspaper. I learn from listening to police officers when I've been out. And believe you me, again, I've been out in neighborhoods across the city with the police, on bike, on foot, in cars. And when I've listened to them, they've told me one of their greatest frustrations is to arrest somebody after all the work they often have to do to arrest somebody. And then, it's not even an exaggeration in some cases to say they're still filling out the paperwork at the police station, and the very same person they arrested on a gun charge, quite often, by the way, is walking by the window kind of waving as they go by because they've been let out on bail. That cannot continue. That cannot continue, and we've received some very helpful signals from the federal and provincial governments that they're going to take action to make sure it doesn't continue. And I can tell you, I think I was the first, if not one of the first in the country to say, if we're going to be serious about combating this gun violence, then we have to say to the people who are repeat offenders and the people who violate their bail conditions, no. You are not getting out on bail again. You will stay in custody pending your trial. And then, hopefully, if they're convicted, they will be dealt with in a way that indicates how poorly we think of this behavior that endangers the people in our community. So I'm going to continue to fight for that and for the changes to the gun laws, because I believe that one significant contribution we can make through tougher gun laws, including, I would suggest, a ban on handguns in the City of Toronto, is going to be to just take the supply of guns down. Because if there are fewer guns, there will be fewer people using them. And then finally, I will just tell you that I remain as committed as ever, and I was committed to this long before I was the mayor. I was out there raising the private sector money from individual Torontonians and from companies and from foundations to invest in the very kinds of programs that Trust 15 is and that Focus Toronto is, because there we have a real chance to make sure that we can provide positive activities, provide a sense of hope, provide a sense of self-confidence, provide an obvious right track that people can go on with the support of the community, with the support of these programs that directs them away from any enticement that people are offering to gangs and to guns. Because in the end, that's what most people need. You've heard me probably say before, no one is born bad. But we can make a very positive contribution to making sure that people take that right track, have the opportunity to take that right track, know what that right track is to a life of hope and accomplishment and achievement and making sure they benefit from all the opportunities that this city represents. And that requires, by the way, an approach that means you have to look at the entire city. And I will say to you one other thing I said I would do when I became the mayor, and I'll finish on this note because I think it's a note that it's appropriate to finish on, it's appropriate to remember, and it is something that I will keep in my mind and in my heart throughout the next 4 years if I'm fortunate enough to be reelected. And that is that when you are running for election in this city, but even more importantly, when you are serving this city, you have to serve the whole city. You have to serve people in Etobicoke, North and South Etobicoke. You have to serve people in North York, in Scarborough, and in the city of Toronto and all parts in between. And you have to make sure you pay special attention to the people who may be, by virtue of isolation, sometimes because of a lack of transit, for example, that are more isolated and don't automatically have access to the opportunity that is Toronto. You have to make sure that for every single one of those people, every single one of those neighborhoods, every single part of this city, that you are there for them. For all of them, without exception. And you know, we can go back to the ways when there were parts of the city pitted against each other. I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in taking one Toronto forward. We are right now, and I get told it over and over again by people from other parts of the world who come here, even including this week for the Toronto International Film Festival, a great jewel that we have. And they say, this city's on top. People are watching. They know it's not perfect, but they're watching, and they know that we found something here about how we live together and how we take our differences and harness them to take this city forward to be great. How our way of life is exceptional in the world. How we support each other. And that's what I intend to see us continue to move forward, because I think we can be. The test is not whether we're on the list of most livable cities in the world today. That's important. It's a feather in the cap of not only people who are here today, but people who went before us. The test is, are we going to be on that list as a city that is admired, that is a magnet for people from around the world to come and to live and invest 20 years from now? And that's what I want to make sure we decide to do, that we proceed to do, that we build the transit, build the affordable housing, attract the jobs, support the people who are in the more isolated communities to make sure this is one city all together that can go forward and be even greater in the coming years than we have been up until now. Thank you very much. I just wanted to say, because I think we're finished the questions for now.
Oh, and we're going to go go off script. I think it's brilliant that
Okay.
you turned around to say hello
Well, I
to
didn't. I'm
everyone
sorry.
here.
I mean, sorry, but I thank you all for being here, and I wanted to. I did notice, I should say, and I'll come to the last person I'll introduce, but I wanted to make sure that you know I'd love to introduce every one of you, but I'm not sure I've shaken every single hand in this room. Probably I may have, but I wanted to in particular acknowledge the presence of my family who are here, and I don't think they're under too much duress coming to these events, though I never really know. But they show up anyway, and just in the order I see them sitting, I have my son George and his wife Allie, and my daughter Susan, and I'm going to skip over Barb for a minute. My son John, and his son William, and his daughter Isabel, and his son John, and my son-in-law Jamie Campbell. And I want to welcome them all here, but I want to particularly say, and I did take note, Barb, that when people were calling out 4 more years, you were not chanting. But I just want to say, and she wouldn't want me to say much about this, but Barb has had a challenging year, a little bit this year. And she hasn't been out on the campaign trail very much with me, but I'm very happy she's here today, and I feel good when she's with me. And we'll have a little practice session on the 4 more years when we get home today. But thank you all for coming, and especially my family for coming. But thank all of you for coming, and Anne, thank you very much for helping me to just keep this sort of organized. And I think we're going to sort of have a little chance to say hi to each other in the other room. So thanks very much for coming.
Thank you, everyone. Well, now we're back on script. Thank you, everyone, for being here today and for all of your energy and enthusiasm and excitement about 4 more years, Barb. We also are privileged to have had such great questions and very thoughtful and again, amazing answers. When you talk to people in Toronto, when you speak to the residents about their city, it's all about Toronto, a family, as you mentioned. You just introduced your family, but we are your family as well, and we appreciate that. Another 4 years for John Tory. He's made such a difference over the past 4 years. Imagine as he takes us into the next decade. John Tory, re-election, 4 more years. You're the best. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.